I did play a couple games I thought were really bad, and I also played a few games I thought were really disappointing, but
I don't really have enough to make either a consistent top 5 worst or top 5 disappointing video this year for you guys, unfortunately. And even if I did, I probably would not have the energy to do another one of those right now. Or ever again.
Alright, last one, guys. Really? 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 Dragon Age, the Veilguard. Can't be that bad, right?
God damn it! Before I start my top 5, I have to bring up a free-to-play dishonorable mention for Silent Hill: The Short Message, or should I say the shit message. When this game first dropped almost out of nowhere, I was so excited to have a new taste of what could come for the long stagnant Silent Hill franchise, only to play something that is so far away from what longtime fans expected and hoped for. The short message doesn't do anything right for the Silent Hill formula. It's a mostly walking simulator with a few chase sequences thrown in about some grief-stricken teenage girl. The biggest sin this game commits, though, while carrying the Silent Hill name, is its absolute failure to handle its subject symbolically. There's just nothing to dissect about what we're seeing or experiencing here. It's all thrown in our faces, and it's made even worse by mentioning COVID-19. Okay, so I guess Silent Hill is in our universe now? Like, we're just completely tossing out the imaginary aspect of these games. As for the horror aspect, it's not really scary at all. I mean, wow, it's a bunch of jocks wearing brown paper bags over their heads. And the stalker monster is a sticky note mannequin figure. Yeah, I admittingly didn't finish the last segment of this game where you have to navigate through indistinguishable and identical hallways to look for chains while constantly trying to evade that thing. I looked up the ending on YouTube to spare me the frustration. I want to make this perfectly clear. It's not that it's scary, it's just fucking frustrating. At least Silent Hill 2 Remake was a banger to make up for that nasty aftertaste. Number 5. Dragon Age: The Failguard. Over time, the Dragon Age series, much like Mass Effect, became less and less like RPGs over time, and more like action games with RPG elements mixed in. But it's gotten to a point now where this new entry, the Veilguard, feels no more of an RPG than God of War or Horizon. To give you a few ideas just how watered down and streamlined they made the gameplay. Not only can you no longer switch control between your main character and your teammates can no longer fall in battle. Actually, they can't even take damage. They are completely immune to everything, but you aren't. Furthermore, you can't even sell or dismantle older or more obsolete gear anymore. Imagine how much more convenient it would be to be able to and get more money and resources that way rather than needing to explore every nook and cranny for them. Now, this game got review bombed almost exclusively over the non binary teammate Tosh. And although I will admit there are moments that felt either ham fisted or just plain uncomfortable, in the long run, these moments are at least brief. The real problem I have with the writing of this game is how restrictive and inconsequential it all feels. It really doesn't let you be a dick or make morally questionable decisions with gray areas, something that even Starfield lets you do for Christ's sake better. 99% of the time, it's just the same choices with three mildly different attitudes on the subject: supportive, sarcastic, and passive aggressive. You do decide what's best for your teammates during loyalty quest lines, but every other environmental impact decision is mirrored. I say mirrored because I actually did play through this game twice, making all the opposite decisions from the first time, only to find out that they copy the same script, the same dialogue with different characters, the exact same outcomes with different locations. Oh, and the whole approval system with your team is pointless because there's no risk of ever losing them no matter what you do to raise any amount of disapproval. So why is it even there? Even the romance options are bullshit. I mean, I spent 60 hours anticipating to see Nev's sexy tits, and they didn't even give me that. Fuck! Look, the game itself is okay. The combat is at least still engaging and controls well, and it is the only game on this list I don't consider mediocre. That's why it's only number 5. But after playing something as deep and complex as Baldur's Gate 3, where the story is entirely altered by player choice and total player freedom, Dragon Age The Veilguard just felt like one disappointment after another in regards to game design and game mechanics. BioWare either needs to change up their formula to live up to the bar that Larian set, or at least go back to how Dragon Age used to play, because this just didn't work. I think the main villain said it best.
Nothing you do matters!
Number 4. Suicide Squad Kill Rocksteady. I mean, let's be real, this game really did kill Rocksteady's reputation. They went from creating the best superhero games of all time, the Batman Arkham series, to this really unflattering live service bomb. I actually didn't hate this game nearly as much as most people did, but that's only because, in retrospect, I refused to push myself through what sounded like the most painfully tedious endgame ever, fighting Brainiac a dozen more times. And for what? I mean, it was bad enough that the main story alone was mind-bogglingly repetitive, with the same boring objectives on repeat. I also didn't bother going through the burden of memorizing every different control scheme for each character, only playing as King Shark throughout the vast majority of my playthrough, just because I felt his traversal controls were the least excruciating. I can't even put into words how much they fucked up the controls between all of them. And even though I don't mind most of the humor, I did find Boomerang to be so fucking insufferable. He just doesn't shut the fuck up. There is no good reason why this game had to be live service. It should have just been a neatly packaged, better focused single-player game with, of course, optional 4-player co-op implemented. They tried to capitalize on it with all the slimy, sketchy business practices that come in the form of season passes and loot boxes and all that other shit, and look at where it's brought them. Seasonal support for the game is already ending, less than 12 months since release, and honestly, I don't think a lot of people would be all that upset if it ever does shut down for good. But hey, at least they were nice enough to give a warm tribute to Kevin Conroy in his final performance as Batman, after they brutally killed off his character in a very unclimactic fashion. Rest in peace, Kevin, even though they done you dirty. Number 3, World of Pooh 2. Specifically the Nintendo Switch version. Yeah, I know it's called World of Goo 2, and I'm aware this is no doubt the one controversial inclusion on this list, but I just found it disappointing on a deeply personal level. It's true, I never had the chance to play the first World of Goo back in 2008 on the Wii, but I always heard great things about it and how it was one of the first really successful downloadable indie games, and how it's one of the best puzzle games of all time, which is why I was expecting a lot more from this sequel, 16 years in the making.
16 times the...
Waiting. I guess I'm just not a fan of this game. I find it hopelessly frustrating. But it's even worse on the Switch due to severe compatibility issues. I only have a Switch Lite, okay? So whenever I do fire up the game, it tries giving me the option to play either with the touchscreen, or the buttons and analog sticks, or an external controller through USB, yet only the touchscreen is responsive, and it feels so uncomfortable in my hands trying to play this game that way, to the point that I rage quitted in my Let's Play before even finishing the first act. Even if I was good at these types of games, I still doubt I'd find it that satisfying. It's supposedly only about 6 hours long for players who aren't trash at it, and there's not much substance here for a $30 game. I don't recommend it, unless you were a die-hard fan of the first game and would play it on PC instead with a mouse. I do find it interesting how World of Goo 1 was this revolutionary game, yet World of Goo 2 sort of flew under everyone's radar. Well, you know what they say, sometimes it's a matter of being too little, too late. Number 2, Skin and Bones, because that's how Skull and Bones felt for me, at least when it first came out. Ubisoft had one job here, to make a really immersive pirate simulator, something they had already successfully did over a decade ago in Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag. Even if they had just copied every idea over, it still would have been a far more entertaining game than this. No actual sword fighting, no powdered pistol gunplay, just exploring oceans and islands. It's like a swashbuckler, only without the buckler. It boggles my mind how it took Ubisoft like 10 years to develop something that feels so minimal, so mundane, so low effort, and barely cooked, all the while being bold enough to claim this thing is like the world's first quadruple A game, like it's the new best game of all time or something. Fucking delusional to be so confident in your abilities to design a game that is, in reality, the literal definition of as big as an ocean but as deep as a puddle. Next time add some meat to it so I don't get bored from mindlessly chipping away for scrap within the first 2 hours of playtime. Number 1, Concord. Oh, whoops. Sorry, I'm from New Hampshire, so the way we pronounce this word is apparently different from the rest of the world. Let me try again. Number 1, Concord. There you go, Darian. Keep on practicing that. Concord might just be the biggest commercial failure in the history of the gaming industry. Yes, maybe even more than E.T. on the Atari 2600, and let me explain why in case any of you missed the scoop. Of shit, that is. Sony gave away $400 million, nearly $500 million, for this studio to create a hero shooter, because apparently there aren't enough of those right now, right? Under some wildly unrealistic expectation of this turning into a media franchise of which its success would rival only that of Star Wars. I'm not making this shit up. There were idiots in expensive suits who predicted this would be the next Star Wars. Let that sink in. When this game was announced at last year's Summer Game Fest, no one bought into it. No one was excited for it. It looked fucking stupid. The characters were all ugly, uninteresting, and cringe beyond the very meaning of the word. And all that money lost on the most basic, generic hero shooter ever. And a $40 one at that. In a multiplayer genre saturated with free-to-play games like Overwatch 2, Valiant, and Marvel Rivals. All better options, too. Whatever good things to be said about the gameplay of Concord is irrelevant now. Sure, it wasn't the worst, but it was far from great, with most of the criticisms centered on the heroes being not only unlikable, but also heavily unbalanced. Notice how I keep saying was instead of is, because they shut this game down less than 2 weeks within its launch, and the very little amount of players who did buy and play it were all refunded their money. So, yeah, Concord made nothing to compensate for the $400 million loss, a huge commercial blowback to Sony, and the subsequent closure of Firewalk Studios with layoffs of over 200 employees, making this among the biggest commercial disasters in gaming history. I tell them next time don't literally shoot for the moon when developing something so unoriginal, but at least Sony made a small comeback with Astrobot shortly after. And there was my top 5 disappointing games of 2024. But why stop there? I've played a few bad games this year, right? You know what? I'm just going to go out and say it. The worst game I played in 2024 was South Park Snow Day. A game so bad that you can't even hear your attacks. I'm not joking. Your attacks make no sound effects in South Park Snow Day.
Ow! Suck on this.
Ouch. Ouch, that hurts.
Yeah.
Eek.
Damn it.
I'm dead.
Ow!
Grr. Eek.
This tank could blow.
There they are. Not the boat.
Oh no!
Getting tired of these fucking games. I just want to go to bed and never wake up.